Okay, I started.
You ready? Okay, Parshas Mishpatim. If you remember last week, I told you that the pasuk that says Nasa v'nishma is Perach of Dalet pasuk Zayin, that it's a mitzvah 24/7. And people point out to you all the time that the Parakim and the Psukim is not necessarily from Jewish authors. They came from non-Jewish authors. But the fact that it came and the fact that we accepted it gives you an idea that it has something right. So someone said to me something very interesting. The way we do gematria, right? An aleph is 1, a beis is 2, gimel is 3. What about in English? You have the English alphabet.
Yes.
Okay? Take the word God. G-O-D. Hashem, God.
Yeah.
The letter G, if you think about it, is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's number 7. Okay, G is the 7th letter. Okay? D is the 4th letter. A, B, C, D is 4. 7 and 4 is 11. Okay? O is 15. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O is 15. 7 plus 15 plus 4 equals 26. So in English, the gematria of God
26.
is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay? That's interesting, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with Aleph Beis, it has nothing to do with anything. But in some ways, no matter what language you have, applying some of the principles that we interpret the Torah, that the Torah has certain universal codes that apply to all languages, even English. That even G-O-D, the gematria, is 26. Is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Now that's fascinating, right? 26 means nothing in the Goyish world, but in the Jewish world, it means everything. Okay. Ve'ela ha-mishpatim asher tosim lifneim. So Rashi says that you put before them, Rashi says, k'shulchan ha'orach, u'muchon lecho lifnei ha'odom. That the laws have to be set up like a shulchan aruch, like a set table. What is a set table? Everything has its place. The fork, the knife, the spoon, the glasses, the plates, everything has its place. That's why we have a shulchan aruch, right? Or a Chaim, Yoredeya, Avonu Ezer, Choshe Mishpah. The Chidah writes in his Sefer Shem HaGadolim, a very fascinating Chidah. And I photocopied it here. The Chidah writes that in Shamayim, when they decided there should be a Shulchan Aruch written on earth, there were 3 candidates to write the Shulchan Aruch. The first one was a candidate, the Maharai Ibn Leib, a famous Pirush on Gemara, the Maharai Ibn Leib. The second candidate was Rabbi Yosef Chechik, a fellow by the name of Rabbi Yosef Chechik, a big Talmud Chacham. And the third candidate was the Moran HaKodesh HaBeit Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Cairo. So in Shamayim, they decided there should be a Shulchan Aruch, and they were debating who should be the one of the 3 to get the idea as a gift. So the Chidah writes that in the end, it was Rabbi Yosef Cairo who was chosen. Why? Mipnei anubusenu hayesera, because he was a great honor. That means because he was so humble, he had the schus to write the Shulchan Aruch. And he brings down over here that when he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the Maharai Ibn Leib made a gezerah against his students not to learn it. He felt that the Shulchan Aruch was not done properly. And what happened was, he began to forget his learning. And when he began to forget his learning, he realized he was being punished from Shamayim. So he took back the gezerah. It's interesting, we talk about people make gezerot not to learn the Sefer of the Rambam, and how bad things happen when they made such gezerot. Now the next part is even more fascinating. Rabbi Yosef Cairo writes the Shulchan Aruch. But the Ashkenazim have different customs. Not all, but some. So the Ramah had all these ideas of how to point out where the Sephardim are different than the Ashkenazim. So people came to the Ramah, and they said to the Ramah, "You're so great, you should write your own Shulchan Aruch." It was easy. He had a Shulchan Aruch to copy from. So instead of, why don't you just write your own Shulchan Aruch? And listen what the Ramah said. The Ramah said, Rabbi Yosef Cairo was chosen because of anivut, because he was humble. If I go write my own Shulchan Aruch, and I create the idea that there are two, there's a Shulchan Aruch for Sephardim, a Shulchan Aruch for Ashkenazim, that's gaiva. What do you think my chances are of success? Zero. So not only did he not write his own Shulchan Aruch, but he wrote in smaller print comments on the Shulchan Aruch. He says, not only, I'm not going to even write it the same size. That means the Shulchan Aruch will be in big, and I'll write in Rashi in small letters, like in parentheses, what Ashkenazim, what the minhag for the Ashkenazim is. And because the Ramah did that, he became universally accepted. Again, through the anivus, through the humility of the Ramah, his sefer became universally accepted. How much so that in many of the halachic discussions, where you have the Mogen Avram and the Taz and the Beis Shmuel and the Sma, and they argue sometimes on the Shulchan Aruch or on the Ramah, and later Gaonim. But at the end of the day, you'll find many poskim who will say, even though this rabbi disagrees with the Ramah and this person disagrees with the Ramah, but the Ramah's halacha stands. Because the Ramah was so accepted and so powerful, his decision, because he had siyata d'shmaya from Shemayim, that the Ramah's decisions remained eternal. And it comes out that even when people disagreed with the Ramah, they couldn't disagree with the Ramah completely. It brings down over here that lo signov, right? You're not supposed to steal. If you steal and you don't have the money to pay back, what happens to you? You get sold. You get sold as a slave. How many years are you sold as a slave for? 6 years.
Jewish.
And the idea is you work, and you get a job, and you get training, vocational training, food and clothing and shelter, and eventually you get back on your feet, and you can go take care of your family. So, if a person is in that position, and after 6 years he says, I don't want to leave. I'm very happy. I want to continue staying here. So what happens? What happens? So it says, V'yigishu adonov el Elokim, v'yigishu el adeles ol hamezuzah, v'rotza adonov es ozno b'martzeya, v'avodo le'olam, he's a slave forever until Yovel comes.
49. Okay?
So it says over here that they bring down that they pierce his ear.
Yeah,
okay? Now, which ear do they pierce? The right ear or the left ear?
Right.
So they're not sure. And they learn out from a Gezeda Shava it might be the right ear. So they ask, what's the question? Normally everything is done with the right hand, the right foot, the right ear. Normally it's always done with the right. So he answers that the whole reason we pierce his ear is because his ear heard at Har Sinai, don't steal. And when Hashem spoke to the Jewish people, it says at Har Sinai, if I'm speaking to you, and I'm speaking from my right side is facing your left side. So people heard through the left ear. So since they heard through the left ear, maybe they have to pierce the left ear. So in the end, they say it's the right ear. Now he brings down from the Chizkuni something fascinating. He says, when the Beis Din sells a person for 6 years, there's a record. So if this slave ever runs away, you can usually prove he's my slave because there's a record. But if the guy's a slave for 30 years and he runs away, or someone says, that's my slave, how do you prove he's your slave? That means they didn't have papers. Yeah. It's not as if you're buying and selling people. We don't do that. So you have a slave who works for you, and he's not really a slave, he's just working for you, and you have to treat him better than you treat yourself. And now someone says, hey, he works for me. So you're both arguing over this person. How do you prove who's right? So the Chizkuni says it's very simple. He has a hole in his ear, and when he made the hole in his ear, it was on your doorpost. Take him to the doorpost and match up the holes. If his ear and the hole matches your doorpost, it's yours. And if it matches his doorpost, it's his.
How is he going to match the doorpost?
Well, because when you pierce the ear, it says you're supposed to put the ear like this to the doorpost,
So it's going to be
and you
the scar?
there's a scar. Because but usually the hole will close up, right? But there's a scar, and you match the scar to the doorpost. If they're both the same, and it's my house. Now, of course, if I sell my house, it's not going to work. And if someone else has a hole in his doorpost, and it matches the same, it's not going to work. But it's one of the added ways of knowing, because we don't brand people. So how do you show that a person belongs to you? Now he brings down from the Pirkei the Rabbi Eliezer. The Pirkei the Rabbi Eliezer asks, what about if a woman is the slave? That means they used to sell women as slaves, not to do work, not for theft. The idea was women who could find shidduchim that way. They would join a family and they would get training in the household to knit, to sew, to cook, to wash. And the idea would be that the household that she's being trained in, someone in that family will marry her. So that was the idea. It was a way of doing shidduchim. Maybe not our way of doing it today, but in those days, it was one of the ways. You have to remember, back then, there were many more women than men. Maybe we have that same problem today. A lot of men died in war. So women died young in childbirth, but a lot of men died in war. So, it was very difficult to find enough men and women for shidduchim. So the question is, if she wanted to stay longer, do they pierce her ear? There's a woman who says, I want to stay more than the 6 years. So the answer is no. That the Rambam brings down, She'ein amo ha'ivya nirtza'as. A woman, the ear is not pierced. And it's very interesting why. They say from the Pirkei the Rabbi Eliezer that Chava, when Hashem said to Chava, you will be subservient to Adam, it was like piercing her ear.
She already had a hole.
She had a hole in her ear. So they say that a hole in the ear of a woman reminds us of the curse of Chava in Gan Eden. So the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer seems to be of the opinion that we don't pierce women's ears. It goes to the argument, do women have ears pierced? Sorry, are your ears pierced? Are you happy that they're pierced? Good. Years ago, I guess it was a debate amongst women to pierce their ear or not. So he says, the reason why it's a debate, because it reminded them of Chava. That was part of Chava's punishment. That's what the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says. Okay. It says, that if a person is sick, they can go to a doctor. Why do we need a pasuk to tell us if you're sick, you can go to a doctor? What would I have thought? A person gets sick, what might they think? They might think, Hashem made me sick. So therefore, Hashem has to make me better. And going to a doctor lacks emunah, lacks bitachon. So therefore, the Torah says, no, that there is a concept that you can go to the doctor. And therefore, if your person is not well, you can go to the doctor, and the doctor has permission to cure you. The doctor has permission to cure you. So now, Reb Baruch Epstein, who's the author of a sefer called the Baruch She'amar, he had a question. A doctor asked him a question. If I am busy and someone calls me up and says they need treatment, can I send them to a different doctor? Can I send them to the hospital, to the ER? Or do I have to treat them? That was his question. He wanted to know that does a doctor have the right to say, I don't want to treat you. I want to send you to the ER. I'm golfing today. Today is my day off. I want to send you someplace else. So he brings down from one of the Masechtas Avodah Zorah. He brings down as follows. Fascinating. He says that in Shamayim, when there's a Gezerah against a person, the Gezerah says, such and such a person by name, on such and such a day, on such and such an hour, will get sick. And will only get better through the help of such and such a doctor. That means even the name of the doctor is part of the Gezerah. And the Yerushalmi brings down in Adorim that not every doctor has the schus to cure. Sometimes it's not enough going to a doctor who's a professional, who's an expert. It's about finding the right doctor. And it may not always be the best doctor, but somewhere there's a doctor whose name in Shamayim was said was your doctor to cure you. So therefore, Reb Baruch Epstein says that if a person calls you and says he wants to come to be treated and you're busy, you can't send him someplace else. It's possible that you're the only one who can treat him. It's not that you can say, what difference does it make if I treat you or not, as long as you get treated. He says there's a big difference. Because in Shamayim, the other doctor may not be on the list. You may be the only one on the list. And he brings down from the Shulchan Aruch in Yoredeya, Siman Shin Lamed Vav Sif Aleph. Nitna HaTorah Rishus L'Rofe L'Rapos. The Torah gives Rishus to the doctor to heal. U'mitzvahi, it's a mitzvah. U'bechlal pikuach nefeshi, it's life-threatening. Ve'im monea atzmo, and if the doctor doesn't treat, harei zeh shofech domim, he's a murderer. Va'afilu yesh lo mi sheyirpa'enu, and even if he has someone that's covering his cases, he has someone else that can treat you. Shelo min kol adam zeichel yisrapos. You don't always get cured from any doctor. Sometimes you need to have the right doctor. And there are many examples I can tell you of people who are misdiagnosed and given the wrong medicine. And it complicates their treatment tremendously. Because in Shamayim there was a particular doctor who was empowered to cure that person. And you need to find that doctor.
How?
But how is possible to...
Well, I would like to think that you find out from the doctor who is being the one that you have as your pediatrician, or the doctor who is your designated doctor. He's the one you go to first, because logic says that in Shamayim, he's the one that is being told for you. So that's where you go to. You go to your doctor who you normally go to. But if your doctor doesn't want to treat you, and he says, I'm no different than anybody else, that's not true. You may not be, you are different than everybody else. So that's something very, very interesting. Okay. It brings down a story here as follows. Very famous story. There were two brothers whose father died. And in the will, they had two gifts to give over to the children. One was a small fortune. That was one parcel, a small fortune. One child will get the house and the money. The second child will get a Sefer Torah that was in the family. But it wasn't just any Sefer Torah. It was one of the 3 Sefer Torahs written by Ezra HaSofer. That means our Sefer Torahs are modeled after Ezra HaSofer. And tradition says that Ezra HaSofer wrote 3 Sefer Torah. And in this family, they had one of those Sefer Torahs. So now the two brothers began arguing. Both of them wanted the Sefer Torah. Because the Sefer Torah was priceless.
Yeah.
It was worth more than the house and the bank account. I guess they made a gorel, whatever it was, they decided, and one brother got the money, and one brother got the Sefer Torah. So what happened? the brother that got the money was so angry that at night he went into the shul where the Sefer Torah was, and he opened it up, and he carefully crossed out a letter ayin on the word v'vadatem es Hashem Elokeichem, you should worship God, and he wrote with a feathered pen the letter aleph, which says v'ibadatem, you should destroy Hashem. And he rolled it back up and he put it in. Each week they read from the Sefer Torah. When they got to that line, and the Baal Korah was reading it, and he saw the mistake, the Sefer Torah was puzzled. And not only was the Sefer Torah puzzled, but everybody said it could not be from Ezra HaSofer. Because a mistake like that would never have gotten past the scrutiny of Ezra HaSofer. So yesterday, he had a priceless Sefer Torah. Today, his Sefer Torah has no value. Well, this brother was so upset that he was duped and that the Sefer Torah was not Ezra, that he went to bed crying. And that night, Ezra HaSofer came to him in a dream and said to him, I want you to know that is my Sefer Torah. And that someone, crossed out, erased the ayin and put an aleph. And in the dream, he said, Who? Who did it? And he says, tomorrow you'll know. And the next day, his brother was in an accident, and his eye got knocked out. And he said, I deserved what I got. Ayin tachat ayin. An eye for an eye. Ayin is the letter ayin that I erased, so I lost my eye because I erased it. That's the story he brings down over here. He brings down, of course, they then fixed the Sefer Torah.
What? A real story?
It's a real story.
How long?
It must have been Ezra HaSofer was during the days in the beginning of the second Beit HaMikdash. So it's easily 2,500 years ago. Now, he brings down another story, which is a well-known story. I heard this story before many times. He brings down a story that the Rambam traveled a great distance and spent a lot of money to buy one of the Sefer Torahs of Ezra. That the Rambam actually located one of the Sefer Torah of Ezra. Now remember, when the Rambam lived, it was 1,500 years after Ezra lived. And he was so happy that he found one of the Sefer Torah of Ezra that every year, right, he would make a party, a great Simchas Haidah. He would make a party celebrating the fact that he found one of the Sefer Torah of Ezra.
It was good?
It was good. It was a kosher
1,500 years?
Over 1,500 years old.
Wow.
The Torah,
Okay.
he made the change. The letter is not kosher anymore, right?
Well, the one that was changed, you could fix it. You see, tefillin you can't fix like that. And a mezuzah you can't fix because you have to write it in order. A Torah you can fix. Had he crossed out one of Hashem's names, it would have been different.
Yeah.
You can't erase one of Hashem's names. But the ayin was a mistake. A sofer could fix it.
What was with this ayin he crossed?
The word was supposed to be the avadatem. You should serve, you should worship. But if I take the ayin and I put an aleph, it's the ibadatem. The ibadatem means you should destroy. So it said you should destroy Hashem. Couldn't be. So it was one letter. The difference between worship and destroy is one Hebrew letter. But which letter was it? The ayin. Ayin represents the eye. So he lost his eye. Ayin tachas ayin. Okay? So he says that the Rambam made a party, and he was so happy. He was so happy that he found the Sefer Torah of Ezra HaSofer. He brings down a story over here that there was a great tzaddik, Rabbi Yaakov Reisher, who wrote a Shaila Tshuva book called the Shvus Yaakov. Very well-known book. I have it at home. Well-known sefer of questions and answers, halakhic questions and answers called the Shvus Yaakov. And when he became the head of the Beis Din in a community called Mintz, And he was hoping now he could settle and learn Torah. It was much more established, a very big community. He got an eye infection. And in the process, he began to lose his eyesight. And this was very distraught. He was very upset because he had just gotten settled. He just moved to a new community. He just had the ability to learn even more than he ever learned before. And he was losing his eyesight, like a type of glaucoma. So he davened to Hashem, and he said to Hashem, if you give me back my eyesight, I will write a commentary on a sefer called the Ein Yaakov. Now you have to understand the play on words. His name was Yaakov. Ein Yaakov means Yaakov's eye. It's a sefer that goes through the entire Talmud and pulls out all the stories and explains them. And people have at home a shas, but there's a sefer called the Ein Yaakov. And Hashem gave him back his eyesight, and he wrote a beautiful commentary on the Ein Yaakov, and he called it the Iyun Yaakov. Iyun means a deeper penetration of the eye from Yaakov. So he wrote a sefer on the Ein Yaakov as a gift, saying thank you for giving his eyesight back. There were many books like that. The Pnei Yehoshua, there's a book in Talmud, Pnei Yehoshua. He writes in his commentary that he was a victim of a fire. There was a fire in his home and he was trapped. And he said in the fire that if Hashem saves me from this fire, I'll write a commentary on Talmud. And when he got saved, he wrote a sefer called the Pnei Yehoshua. There are many books that they wrote at times of great adversity, when things were going very, very bad. They wrote Sfarim. They wrote these Sfarim. And he wrote the sefer called the Pnei Yehoshua. He brings down over here that, on Har HaMenuchos, I don't know how many of you have been to Eretz Yisrael, one of the cemeteries, one of the larger cemeteries, is called Har HaMenuchos. Have any of you ever been to Har HaMenuchos in Israel? No? When was the last time you were in Israel? Never. Maybe
this year.
Maybe this year.
$300
Yeah.
350.
Dan's deals, probably.
Huh?
Dan's deals.
My.
Okay.
Today my nephew told me 300, 350.
Okay.
Two ways.
Not bad. Probably through Russia or something like that.
No, Israel.
I know, but you have to go through...
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, 2 ways.
On Har HaMenuchos is a cemetery. It's one of the largest cemeteries in Israel. You have Har HaZeisim, you have Har HaMenuchos. I've been to Har HaMenuchos many times. On Har HaMenuchos, in the original section, they have a section called Har HaRabbonim, the mountain of the rabbis. That's where Reb Moshe Feinstein is buried, Reb Aaron Kotler, Reb Zalman Sorotskin, the Belzer Rebbe, other Hasidic Rebbes, Reb Avrom Yafin, the Oznaim LaTorah, Zalman Sorotskin.
Wait.
In Har HaMenuchos, all together, there's a section called the Mountain of the Rabbis, Har HaRabbonim, in Israel. Rabbi Belsky was buried there recently. Rabbi Belsky from Torah Vodas.
What city?
In Yerushalayim.
Oh.
It's in Givat Shaul, at the end of Givat Shaul. Rebbe Yoshev is not buried there, he's buried around the corner. A little bit higher up is Rav Shimshon Pinkas. I went to his grave. He's buried there with his wife and his daughter. They died in a car accident. The Chidah is buried there. Reb Meir Shapiro, who organized the Daf Yomi, is buried there. Reb Mordechai Eliyahu, the Rav Haroshi, that passed away just a few years ago, is buried there. He's all Har HaMenuchos has some of the most famous rabbis are buried on Har HaMenuchos.
Rabbi.
Right. So he says over here, on Har HaMenuchos in Yerushalayim, in this section of the Rabbonim, next to Reb Aharon Mibelz, the Belzer Rebbe, there's a matzeva, there's a tombstone. And I'll tell you what's written on the tombstone. It says, Po Nitman, here is buried Harav Agona Chosi Reb Eliezer Yosef Ledberg. Here bits Torah Barabim. He publicly taught Torah. Lomad v'chozer ba'al peh, he learned and repeated by heart, more than 4,000 times, the Masechta, the Gemaras of Beah and Rosh Hashanah. Now that's unusual. Have you ever learned anything 4,000 times? Imagine you go to yeshiva, you learn a Gemara. Beah is not a big Gemara. Rosh Hashanah is not a big Masechta. 30 pages. He learned it 4,000 times. So they bring down over here that he was someone whose eyesight failed him. And as he was losing his eyesight, he was afraid he couldn't learn because he couldn't see. So he memorized these two Masechtas. And when he became blind, he just kept repeating them over and over in his head. He would learn it in his head. And by the time he died, he learned it 4,000 times. Because of this, what?
He died blind?
He died blind. It says over here, from the Kav HaYosher, there's a sefer called Kav HaYosher, that every person in their lifetime should find something to learn perfectly. Maybe a Masechta in Shas, maybe a particular book in Novi, and know it by heart. And it becomes known as your Olam Haba Masechta. It's your key to Olam Haba. That means a person says to himself, there are many times I'm sitting in an airplane, I don't have a book, a sefer. I'm walking in the street, I don't have a sefer. I'm sitting on a subway, I don't have a sefer. So I'm just doing nothing. But if I knew something by heart, I could review it. Someone who knows Tehillim by heart, or Sefer Yehoshua by heart, or Chumash Bereshis by heart. So he says, or the Shema, anything. He says that every person should find something that they should learn by heart. He's talking about a Masechta of Shas. And he says it becomes known as your Olam Haba Masechta. What gives you a share in the world to come? The Olam Haba Masechta. Okay, question. There's a fire in your house on Shabbos. Are you allowed to put it out?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Depends on what?
Many things.
I'm sure it depends on many things. Technically, it's a problem. Because to put out a fire is Chilul Shabbos. Why would you put out the fire? Because you want to save your house.
Save your life.
Well, the difference to save your life. But let's say you can get out of the house.
Yeah, easy.
So all you're saving is your money. Are you allowed to be Mechalel Shabbat to save your money?
No.
No. So if you have a fire in your house, it's not so simple that you can call the fire department. It's not so simple you can put out the fire. So he brings down here from the Trumas Hadeshin. It's one of the Perushim on Shas. He says in his community, the Goyim had a very unusual law. If you have a fire in your house and it spreads to another house, then when the fire department comes, they throw you into the fire and kill you because you damaged your neighbor's house. That's what he says over here.
What?
That's what the Trumas Hadeshin says. That was in his community. That was the thinking of the community. So therefore, he says that he publicized that in his community, if any house catches on fire, you're allowed to put it out. Because if you don't put it out,
They kill you.
and it spreads to someone else's house, they'll kill you. Now, in the olden days, houses were all made out of wood, so they burnt very fast. And the houses were all next to each other. You know, you have famous fires in America. San Francisco had a famous fire that was started by a cow. It burnt down almost 3/4 of the city of San Francisco. I think in 1904 or something. By the time they got there, it was too late. Houses got destroyed. Even here in New York, you have attached homes. And it jumps from one, if a windy day, it jumps from one home to the next. One fire in one bedroom can destroy 8 houses. Well, they're not going to throw you into the fire if you do that. But, you know, in his days, that's what they did. So he said, that's Pikuach Nefesh. You know, that's interesting. I had on Rosh Hashanah by me, I have CO2 detectors in the house. So it went off. The CO2 detector. Now, in the end, there was a faulty CO2 detector. I had to replace the detector. But in my home, the CO2 detectors are wired into the alarm system of the house. So even though my alarm was not set, because we were in the house, it was Rosh Hashanah, but the CO2, which is behind the box, is on 24/7. So it sent a message to Central Station, and 5 fire trucks came to the house with their sirens blaring. Now they have a CO2 detector, and they came in and they checked from the 3rd floor all the way down to the basement. There was nothing. So they said that the detector, so they came and they cut the wires to that detector, and we bought a new one, and I rewired it. Otherwise, they'd be coming every 5 minutes. But, but if the alarm did not go off, could we have called someone because of the CO2 detector or not? Probably not. We could get out of the house. That's all. You just close the house and you leave. You don't have to. You can't be machal Shabbos or Yontif, for the sake of money.
You're gonna be bankrupt.
What?
You're gonna be bankrupt.
Well, I hope not.
You got the
I
insurance
hope
for that.
not. And hopefully the
Bye.
insurance will cover.
Yeah.
But it's
It
interesting.
was on Shabbos, right?
But it was Rosh Hashanah Shabbos, so I was stuck no matter what I did. So, but it was Baruch Hashem. It was nothing, and everything worked out fine. It says Ubasar basod treifo lo sochelu. If you find a piece of non-kosher meat, treif meat, in the field.
Before I forget, I'm sorry, but CO2 is not fire. It's
No,
life
it's a
treatment.
gas.
Yeah, it's life treatment. So it's you make call and
No, I
you
leave
make
the
that.
house.
Oh, you live. Yeah, but yeah.
I move into your house for the Rosh Hashanah. You would take me if I walked here with my family. What?
Yeah.
See,
Glad-
your
glad-
wife said she would take us.
Gladly.
That's what counts, okay? That's what counts. So, it says, "Ubasar basoda treifo." If you find treif meat in the field, lo sochelu, don't eat it because it's treif. What are you supposed to do with it?
Throw it to the dog.
You throw it to the dogs. Like kelev tashlichun, so you throw it to the dogs. Why are the dogs so lucky to get all the treif meat?
And scream at us when we're coming at you.
So the answer is it's a reward, because when we left Mitzrayim, they didn't bark at us.
Yeah.
Okay, they talk about the dogs being confused. When they see Eliyahu Hanavi, they're barking happy. When they see the Malach HaMoves, they're barking sad. They saw both when they left Mitzrayim, so they didn't bark at all. They were confused.
Quiet.
Okay, they were quiet. So now, there's another reason. Listen to this reason. The reason is that in the olden days, most people had sheep.
Yeah.
Who guarded the sheep?
Dogs.
The dogs. And they talked that when they left Mitzrayim, they had a lot of dogs that left Mitzrayim because they guarded the sheep. Okay? So think about this. One of them before she asked this question. Listen to this question.
Okay.
The dog guards the sheep. A wolf came and attacked one of the sheep and killed it. So you give it to the dog. That means we reward the dog for not doing his job. Think about it. Had the dog done his job,
Well,
the sheep would not have gotten killed by the wolf. He wouldn't be getting treif. But because he didn't do his job, an animal got killed. So we reward him. We say, here, present, you get
Mistake.
for your mistake. We reward your mistake. So why is that? And the answer that is given is a fascinating answer. Fascinating answer. He says, you know what you see from here? Listen to this. A person does you a favor once, twice, 3 times. The 4th time, for whatever the reason, he lets you down. You still owe him. Thank you. Hakarat hatov. Because 3 times he did you a favor. That means,
who did to who? I didn't get it.
let's say I did you a favor, and a few months later I did you another favor. One time when you needed me, I let you down. So you might say, you know what? I'm unreliable, therefore I owe you nothing. We see from here
No.
that when someone works for you and does a good job on a regular basis, but lets you down one time, you still owe them hakarat hatov. That means one time the dog was sleeping, didn't protect the sheep. But 100 days he protected the sheep. He still gets the food. It's a fascinating idea because people go through life thinking, what have you done for me today? I don't care what you did for me yesterday. Today you let me down. So what? It could happen. It could happen. Alpha PK, you owe them Hakaras Hatov. Now, this week, I'm going through the Yerushalmi. I mentioned to you that I'm going through Zroim Yerushalmi because there are no Bavli Gemaras except for Brachos in Zroim. Everything is Mishnah. Yerushalmi has Gemara. So I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished the entire Zroim Yerushalmi. I have like 10 pages left. Probably in a week and a half I'm going to be finished. I'll make a siyum with all of Zroim. That's, one whole section. I'm not sure I'm going to continue with the Yerushalmi. I might go into something else because the other Masechtas have Bavli. So I don't know if I want to learn Yerushalmi if I have Bavli. But here they did it. So right this week, I was learning Masechtas Trumos. And he brings down 3 stories with a dog. You got to listen to this story. Listen to this story. It's a fascinating story. Okay? It says, Maaseh, there's a story, Mitabach B'tziburi, a butcher in a town called Tzipuri, which was up north. Shehoya Michael Yisrael Nevelus Utrefus. He was dishonest, and he sold as kosher meat that was Nevel and Trefa, meat that the animal died or was not kosher. He was a dishonest butcher. What happened? Pam acha shosa yain be'erev Shabbos. One Friday afternoon, he got drunk. He drank wine to excess. Shabbat came, and he was walking on his roof, because in those days the roofs were flat. He doesn't want to catch a cold. He knows you're a generous guy, but he doesn't want you to give him that. One Friday night, he was walking on his roof, the nofal, and he fell off the roof, umes, and he died. He got killed. V'hoyu klovim malakim adomo, and the dog started coming and licking his blood. So the community said, that's such a bizayon, it's such an embarrassment. They asked, could they carry him inside, away from the dogs? A dead body is muktzah on Shabbos. So they went to the Rav, they went to Rabbi Chanina. V'sholan Rabbi Chanina, what should we do? We can't let him lay there. The dogs are eating his blood, the body. He's muktzah. We got to do something. What should we do? Amar lahen. This is what he said to them. It says, when you have treif meat, you give it to the dogs to eat. This guy stole the dog's treif meat. So they're just getting back what he owes them. And he said, leave the body alone. Irony. He says, he stole the treif meat from the dogs and gave it to Jews to eat. Therefore, what's happening is the dogs are just taking back what he took from them.
Payback time.
Payback, big time. Karma.
Yeah, they eat his blood.
Karma. Not an easy Gemara to understand. Not easy Gemara. Then the Gemara says that there was a rabbi who came to a person's house, and the owner of the house sat the rabbi at the head of the table, right next to the dog. So the rabbi said to the owner of the house, "What, you trying to embarrass me? Of all the seats around the table, you put me in this seat right next to the dog? What are they? I'm a dog? I'm together with the dogs?"
But is it allowed to keep a dog in Jewish family?
Well, in those days they had a lot of dogs because they had sheep.
Yeah.
So he asked, are you allowed to do that? I mean, he was sitting next to the dog. So the man said, listen to the man answered. He says, a few weeks ago, robbers came into the house. And they wanted to kidnap my wife. And the dog saved my wife.
Wow. So now dog is honest.
So the dog is a special dog. And therefore, he deserves the honor to be seated next to you, and you deserve the honor to be seated next to him. And the Gemara says, that's what the Gemara says, yeah. Unbelievable. Then the Gemara brings down another story that's even wilder than the first stories. The Gemara brings down a story that there was a cemetery. That in the cemetery there was a tombstone, a matzeva, for a dog. And it says, here is buried a righteous dog, and there's a whole thing on a tombstone in a cemetery for a dog. So they asked, why did they bury a dog in a Jewish cemetery and put a tombstone up? So the Gemara says that what happened was, there was a bunch of farmers out in the field, and there was a pot of water that a snake had come in and put venom in. In the olden days, if you let water uncovered, it was forbidden to drink that water because it was dangerous. And the farmers were away. They didn't know this, but the dog saw it. So when the farmers came, they were thirsty. So they filled up a cup of water, and the dog jumped and knocked the cup out of their hand. So they smacked the dog, and they filled up another cup. He did it again. Finally, they gave an order to tie up the dog because he keeps knocking the cup out of her hand. And the dog ran and drank from the water and went into convulsions and died.
Oh my God.
And they realized that the water was poisonous and that the dog had saved their life. So because this dog saved their life, the Gemara says they buried the dog in the cemetery, and they put a Jewish cemetery, and they put a tombstone on it. Okay? A new definition for what it means that a dog is a man's best friend.
Yeah.
So here, it's not our tradition to have dogs or to raise dogs or to have dogs as pets. It's not our tradition. But the Gemara in Trumos brings 3 stories, about dogs. So it's
But the Torah says the dog is the
It's not allowed to.
you're not allowed to have a wild dog.
not the same animals, the versus animals. From the
There's a Gemara that says that there was a pregnant woman who was walking by and the dog barked and scared her. And she lost the baby because of it. And when the owner of the dog said to the woman, "Don't worry, he's not dangerous, he doesn't bite," she says, "Well, it's too late, the damage is done." And from there they learn out that we're not supposed to really raise dogs. It's not something that we do.
Hashem, dog not punished dog. It's not holy animal.
Correct, on one hand. On the other hand, Hashem gave Cain a dog.
Vitamin C надо принимать.
Okay? Hashem gave Cain a dog to protect him. And when they left Mitzrayim, they had plenty of dogs with them. They say that, and Yaakov sent to Esau as a gift sheep and cattle and dogs to guard them. So they say Yaakov had dogs. So if you look through history, the dogs were very common, but not as pets. They worked for you. They served you. So it was not really done as pets. But it's interesting that the Gemara talks about this and brings that down. Okay. Have a wonderful night. Take care. It's already 9:30. Chodesh Tov. You didn't think